Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. First up, breaking news coming in at this hour. US President Donald Trump has lashed out at European Union and NATO countries and asked them to stop buying Russian oil all over again amid the ongoing war with Ukraine. While talking to reporters, Trump said that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has to make a peace deal with Russian counterpart Putin, and Europe needs to stop buying oil from Russia. Listen in.
Here's the problem. You know the problem. They're purchasing Russian oil. I don't want them purchasing Russian oil, and they've got to stop immediately. Not fair to us. They're purchasing Russian oil, and we have to, do things. Now, the nice part, it doesn't cost us anything anymore. You know that. Yeah. They are buying everything from us, unlike Biden, who gave away $350 billion. We actually make money, but I don't want to make money. You know what I want? I want that war to stop, because last week, 7,018 people got killed. Thank you.
After pressurizing the European Union, then the G7, now NATO member states, and alleging India of fueling the Russian war machine by purchasing oil from Moscow and an additional 25% tariff that was imposed thereof, both the US and India are now back on the negotiating table. India and the US resumed trade talks after a delegation led by US Trade Representative for South and Central Asia, Brendan Lynch, reached New Delhi for a day-long meet. Discussions on the challenges faced by Indian businesses due to additional tariffs was also on the agenda. This is the first time or the first meeting since Trump administration imposed the additional 25% tariffs on India, accusing it of being indifferent to the killings of Ukrainians and buying Russian oil and energy. Earlier, the trade delegation was expected to visit India between the 25th and 29th of August for the 6th round of BTA meet, that's the bilateral trade agreement meeting, but it was rescheduled due to the additional tariffs which were imposed and took the entire tariff against India to about 50% now. The visit also ascertained what the next round of discussions between both the countries could look like. The meeting also comes after US President Donald Trump posted on his Truth Social that both the countries will address trade barriers and was looking forward to speaking to his very good friend, Prime Minister Modi. Now, we have Karishma Sudani with us, who has been tracking the developments on the Commerce Ministry front very, very closely. Karishma, important meeting. What are the big takeaways? All we hear is that the meeting was positive and cordial.
Well, Geeta, the biggest takeaway is something that you've highlighted, and I'll reinstate of the fact that soon there are going to be resumption of the negotiations. This is because Commerce Ministry officials have shared that the meeting was positive, optimistic from both the ends, which means that the deadlock which has been quite for a while now, at least since the 5th round of negotiations that was held in July, is likely to be subsumed by the fact that 6th round of negotiations could soon take off. And I think the bigger thing to look forward is the fact that they want to escalate the closing of a bilateral trade agreement between both the countries, and Trade Minister Piyush Goyal also has been reiterating for a while that though there has been hindrances with the current negotiations, the BTA talks will continue to happen. And knowing the fact that they want to escalate it soon, I will not be surprised if they try to do it as close as end of October, because that was their original plan since the beginning.
Well, Karishma, in the meanwhile, we are looking at 50% tariffs. Was the difficulties that businessmen would be facing in the meanwhile before a conclusion of the BTA, was that discussed? Was that on the agenda?
Well, Geeta, it's going to be difficult for me to decode the agenda for you. The officials are still debriefing the department about it. But I must bring to you the trade data that was released yesterday, which significantly spoke about the export numbers just for the month of August. Though India did well in its overall exports, I would like to highlight that our exports to the US were reduced by close to $1 billion. In the month of July, we exported about $8 billion. In the month of August, we exported about close to $6.82 billion. So that's about close to a $1 billion downfall, and that's just because of the 25% tariff. The picture of September trade data will be clearer, and by numbers, it's very evident of the fact that our exports have been hit, our manufacturers have suffered, but Commerce Ministry has been reiterating of the fact that they are diversifying to different markets. They've shortlisted 50 such markets, and in fact, we've been told that 100 products are being now ascertained, where India also takes in a lot of imports, and government wants to cut down these imports and rather push domestic industry to replace those imports with Atmanirbhar products in order to reduce the deficit.
Right. Before I let you go, very briefly, Karishma, is this restarting or the two sides coming back to the negotiating table, or is this just a feeler, so to say, that Brendan Lynch is here to see where the two sides are headed, really?
Geeta, until this morning, I would have answered this to you as more of a precursor and just to check as an air of negotiation to check if it's possible. But after speaking to my sources in the Commerce Ministry in the evening, and also the official statement coming in from them, it looks like now the road goes forward towards negotiations and resumption of the 6th round of negotiation.
Well, that's big news, and that's very interesting. Karishma Asudani, who's been keeping track of every minute detail that comes out of that ministry and those meetings. Thank you so much for joining us here on the network. Now, Pakistan is pushing for restarting the comprehensive dialogue with India, but New Delhi continues to maintain that talks and terror cannot go together. Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, during an interview with Al Jazeera to a question on back-channel talks or any third-party involvement, said they were ready for bilateral talks, but India maintains that issues between the two countries are in the realm of bilateral. This is Pakistan making an attempt again towards a comprehensive dialogue, which includes trade at a time when Pakistan is reeling under tremendous economic stress. He also admits to an offer of a ceasefire that came through US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a claim President Trump has made umpteen number of times, another claim that has been rubbished by India time and again. Listen in to the voices both from Pakistan and from India.
On the 10th of May, it was the Pakistani army which sent a message that they were ready to stop firing, and we responded accordingly. Well, the US was in the United States. I mean, obviously there were US Secretary of State Rubio and Vice President Vance had called up. Rubio had spoken to me, Vance had spoken to our Prime Minister. They had their view, and they were talking to us, and they were talking to Pakistanis, as indeed were some other countries. Yep. I mean, the United States was not alone in this. I think there were some countries in the Gulf, there were some others as well. That happens naturally, when two countries are engaged in a conflict. But the ceasefire, the cessation of firing and military action was something which was negotiated directly between India and Pakistan. We made one thing very clear to everybody who spoke to us, not just United States, but to everybody, saying, look, if the Pakistanis want to stop firing, they need to tell us. We need to hear it from them. Their general has to call up our general and say this. And that is what happened.
After a two-day visit to Israel, Marco Rubio landed in Qatar and met Qatari Emir. The visit is seen as crucial amid growing tensions following Israeli strike on Doha earlier. But as US Secretary of State concluded his Middle East visit, Israel now continues to pound Gaza with casualties on the rise.
After visiting Israel, Marco Rubio's next stop was Qatar. The visit is seen to ease tensions between Doha and Jerusalem after Israeli strike killed 5 Hamas members and a Qatari security officer, missing a Hamas negotiating team on September 9th. Rubio, who was on a day-long visit, met Qatari Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamid Al Thani. While Rubio was meeting top leaders in Israel, Qatar held emergency summit of the Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation, condemning the Israeli strike on their soil and discussing possible measures against Jerusalem. In a written statement, Gulf leaders announced that the Gulf Cooperation Council's joint defense body will meet in Doha and called for measures to activate the bloc's joint defense mechanism without providing further details. But the visit has not brought any relief to the war-torn Gaza. Israel continued its ground offensive with tanks, military helicopter near the Gaza border. Palestinian residents reported heavy strikes across Gaza City. At least 68 people have been killed by Israeli airstrikes across Gaza since dawn. A United Nations Commission of Inquiry concluded that Israel has committed genocide in Gaza and that top Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, had incited these acts. The 72-page legal analysis cites examples of the scale of the killings, aid blockages, forced displacement, and the destruction of a fertility clinic to back up its genocide finding, adding its voice to right groups and others who have reached the same conclusion.
Genocide is occurring in Gaza. We haven't gone into Palestine yet. We will, because this is a permanent commission. And we named the 3 individuals that we felt were responsible. And we said, and the one is the Prime Minister, the other the President, and the third is the former Minister of Defense. And we said that since they acted as agents of the state, then the state of Israel is responsible.
Israel is fighting a genocide case at the International Court of Justice in Hague. It rejects such accusations, citing its right to self-defense following the deadly October 7, 2023 Hamas attack that killed 1,200 people and resulted in 251 hostages, according to Israeli figures. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
Trouble in India's neighborhood yet again, this time it's the Maldives. Journalists are up in arms against the Mohammad Muizzu government after a contentious media bill which was passed, which seeks to replace the existing self-regulatory system with a government-controlled commission for the media. Despite concerns over freedom of press, the Independent Institutions Committee passed the bill with multiple government-drafted amendments. But then the Maldivian parliament announced that another sitting would be held to pass the bill. Here's my take on statecraft of the democracy that the Maldives was once hailed to be and how it is sliding towards autocracy. You can watch the detailed analysis on India Today Global's YouTube channel. Do subscribe to it as well. For now, here is the excerpt. Tourists see blue lagoons, journalists see red lines. In 2025, the Maldives, the postcard-perfect archipelago India once counted as a dependable ally, is convulsing with youth-led rallies, tear gas, and handcuffed reporters. What began as outrage over suspicious deaths of young women has fused into a full-throttle revolt against President Mohammad Muizzu's tightening grip on power. At the heart of it all sits the Maldives Media and Broadcasting Regulation Bill, a law critics call a direct assault on free expression. Cameras are being seized, journalists are being pepper sprayed, and the government is moving at lightning speed to silence dissent. Has the Maldives, long sold as a democratic success story in the Indian Ocean, finally plunged into autocracy? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. President Muizzu rode a nationalist India out wave to power in late 2023. By 2025, his party holds a supermajority and is pushing constitutional amendments, impeaching judges, and fast-tracking a media bill that strips journalists of protection. Police have cracked down on youth protests sparked by 2 suspicious deaths of young women, first in Malé, then in Holhudu, fueling outrage at state negligence and cover-ups. The government blames political motives. Reporters call it state repression. Opposition parties now march beside journalists under one banner: Stop the bill, stop the slide. Is the Maldives watching its hard-won democratic freedoms evaporate in real time? Across Malé and the atolls, camera crews are dodging batons. The Maldives Journalists Association, once a mild-mannered lobby, is now on the front lines of street protests. Placards demand no censorship as police move in with pepper spray. Protest organizers face charges for obstructing police even as videos show peaceful marches. Parliament is rushing the media bill through stacked committees while protesters chant outside. This is no mere policy dispute. It's a fight over whether independent journalism survives at all in a country that only recently escaped decades of one-man rule. International watchdogs from CPJ to Reporters Without Borders have condemned it as a wholesale dismantling of the self-regulatory framework built after 2008's democratic reforms. In one stroke, decades of fragile media freedom risk being erased. This media storm didn't emerge in a vacuum. It rose from raw public grief. In April 2025, a young woman fell from a 9th-floor building in Malé under suspicious circumstances. Weeks later, Zakia Musa's death was ruled self-inflicted without an autopsy. Families demanded independent probes. Instead, they got stonewalling and police pepper spray. The Maldives has danced this dance before. The 2003 prison death protest shook Maumoon Abdul Gayoom's autocracy. The 2011-2013 rallies over corruption and judicial arrest forced Mohammad Nasheed's contested resignation. Even the August 2004 crackdown on activists paved the way for the 2008 constitution. Each time, demands for justice met riot police, but each time they also cracked open space for reform. The 2025 protests echo that lineage, except now the fight is squarely about media freedom. That's why journalists are risking arrest. That's why youth activists are live-streaming protests despite internet throttling. And that's why international watchdogs call this a point of no return. In the Maldives, free media isn't just about headlines. It's the only lifeline keeping democratic accountability afloat in a rising sea of executive power. For New Delhi, the Maldivian media bill is more than a domestic issue. It's a warning flare about how fragile democratic gains have become across South Asia. Inside the Maldives, the government's tactics are textbook deterrence. Peaceful journalist protests violently dispersed, leaders arrested on dubious charges, parliament committees reshuffled to ram the bill through, police raids justified as maintaining order. Yet, each crackdown only feeds the narrative of an administration scared of scrutiny. New Delhi must decide: double down on quiet diplomacy and development aid, or publicly champion Maldivian democratic forces at the risk of further alienating Moitzu. With Chinese naval visits and comprehensive strategic partnership agreements in the background, every misstep carries weight. For India, the Maldives media bill is a litmus test of whether its neighborhood-first policy can survive in a region where neighbors keep slipping into instability and autocracy. Suspicious deaths lit the spark, but the media bill is the accelerant. Journalists are no longer just reporting the story. They are the story, standing at the barricades of democracy. For India, this is another flashing red light on a neighborhood map turning unstable. Will Malé pull back from the brink, withdraw the bill, and revive its democratic promise? Or will it cement its slide into the autocratic club, leaving India with yet another volatile neighbor on its doorstep? Thank you for watching Statecraft. And here are some other stories from across the globe in World at a Glance. Take a look.
The president's initiative here in Washington, D.C.
FBI Director Kash Patel is testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee and will answer questions about the probe into the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Patel had faced criticism for his handling of the investigation. This also comes ahead of Kirk's shooting suspect Tyler Robinson's first court appearance. US President Donald Trump is filing a lawsuit against the New York Times for defaming and accusing the outlet of being a virtual mouthpiece for the Democratic Party. The president is demanding $15 billion in damages, which exceeds the entire market cap of the New York Times company. Actor, director and producer Robert Redford died at the age of 89. Once dismissed as just another California blonde, Redford's charm and craggy good looks made him one of the industry's most bankable leading men for half a century and one of the world's most recognizable and best-loved movie stars. He was known for his roles in Out of Africa, The Candidate and All the President's Men.
That's all in this edition of India Today Global. But before we go, we leave you with this. The NBA tunnel has officially become basketball's runway. What started as players simply arriving at arenas is now a high-fashion spectacle with bold suits, daring skirts, designer bags and luxury streetwear making headlines as much as the game itself. Icons like LeBron James and Russell Westbrook paved the way, and today's stars are backed by stylists, designers and global brands eager to collaborate. Enjoy. Goodbye and take care.